Hello YouTube, it's Tony. So today I'll show you a beginner guide as well as tips and tricks on how to use defensive abilities. This is part of my beginner bossing playlist, so feel free to check this out. A lot of established PvMers will know what defensive abilities are, but to a beginner it's rather confusing. These abilities are helpful, so much so that you can escape a troubling situation, which is why it's extremely important to learn this. If your primary role is to tank the boss in group PvM, then defensive abilities are even more important. Here is the table of contents for this video. I'm going to explain each defensive ability, then provide you examples on how to use them. I know some examples are more geared for high level players, but that's because some defensive abilities are mainly only good for high level PvM. Also, because I don't do much group PvM, the examples I provide are more tailored towards solo situations. Some defensive abilities will require a shield or benefit better with a shield equipped. For abilities that require a shield, you have to have this shield equipped for the whole duration, because unequipping the shield will end the duration immediately. Also, some abilities benefit better with a higher tier shield. Some people do like to camp a 1H plus shield or defender for getting slow, safe, and even learner-friendly boss kills. Before I talk about abilities, let's get into defenders. Remember when Dragon Defender used to be so great? Well, we have better defenders nowadays, and they're also available for both magic and range. Those who don't know what a defender is, it acts as both a shield and an offhand weapon. The shield tier and the offhand tier is halved, which means a tier 90 defender has the stats of both a tier 45 shield as well as a tier 45 offhand weapon. You will also get access to both defensive and dual wield abilities. Defenders will also give you a plus 3% increase in overall accuracy. They have a 1 in 15 chance to reduce a hit taken by 50 to 100%, and in doing so, if it procs, it will increase the accuracy of the next attack by 20%. Whether a defender is worth it or not depends on the situation, but I will do a separate video comparing this and a shield. The first defensive ability we have is Anticipate, which lasts 10.2 seconds. It will reduce the damage taken by 10%, and you're also immune to binds and stuns. However, it is not usable if you're already stunned or bound, so you have to use this beforehand. You'll mostly use Anticipate for bosses that will bind or stun or have a dragging mechanic. For bosses that do not stun, however, the 10% damage effect just isn't worth it. If both Anticipate and Freedom are off cooldown, then you should prioritize Anticipate. One bossing example I've shown you is the next Ice Prison. This happened during the ice phase, and when I anticipated beforehand, I still got trapped in the prison, but I could still eat and use other defensive abilities inside this. When it comes to escaping PKers, Anticipate is one of the key abilities you want to use. Most PKers will stun and teleblock you on sight, so make sure you do this so that you can move around. As soon as I see a player dot on the minimap, I would use Anticipate, then Surge or Run. Not anticipating in advance is perhaps one of the biggest reasons why many people get PK'd by PKers. This happens a lot even for short trips like the Abyss runecrafting or combat training. After this we have Freedom, which is similar to Anticipate, but this time you can use this even if you're stunned or bound. It will remove the stuns and binds, and then it will give you stun immunity for 6 seconds. In addition, if you are taking damage from bleed abilities, it will remove them. So despite Freedom having a shorter duration and a longer cooldown, it actually works when you're stunned, unlike Anticipation, which is really essential for an emergency situation. Like I said before, never use both Anticipate and Freedom at the same time or while either effect is ongoing, or else if another stun is coming soon before it comes off cooldown, then you're out of luck. As shown in this example, I did not anticipate in advance, and so I would get stunned right as Raksha throws his magic smoke bomb attack. I had to use Freedom so then I can run away from the smoke. In PvP situations, Freedom is your backup if Anticipate is still on cooldown. After this we have Resonance, and that requires the shield to activate. In the next 6 seconds it will reduce the damage of the next single hit to 1. Now the hit must land and do more than 1 damage, so if Devotion was active, then the 1 damage will not be healed, nor the effect will be consumed. The amount of damage it will heal is based on the tier of the shield, which ranges from 50.5% to 95%. Many people will bring a shield switch just for this purpose, and then switch back to DPS weapons after the effect activates. So Tony, why is res so good? For one thing, it saves food. Secondly, it saves the need to have to burn 10% adrenaline if you were to eat a solid food instead. And 3, it will save your life from a dangerously strong hit. The example I've shown here is the Hellware Bleed attack. When he says you'll bleed, you have to time the res so that you can heal a big melee hit. The next example we have is the Vindicta range attack on phase 2, and when you res, you actually get healed a lot of damage. Of course, there are several more examples, which is why many boss guides will recommend bringing a shield switch just for res itself. Devotion is unlocked from God Wars Dungeon 1, or you can play the Anima Islands minigame. It's a defensive threshold that lasts 9.6 seconds, and if you were to kill a monster, this can extend the duration by 4.8 seconds for up to 19.2 seconds in total. Normally protection prayers on RS3 are 50%, but if you activate Devotion, they become 100% effective. Because this is a threshold ability and it costs adrenaline, it's mainly worth using if you take a lot of hits at once of the same combat style. Also, because we have perks such as Enhanced Devoted or Devoted, it will give you 3 seconds of devotion for free. A good example of where to use this at would be Masuda's spin attack. He has a mechanic that can deal heavy and fast melee hits. And then for a lower leveled example, we have the Hellware Frenzy attack, in which case he will hit a lot of melee hits at once. One tip I suggest when it comes to using Devotion is that you could actually use this losslessly if you don't have a target. When you killed a monster recently or when you start a fight, activating Devotion will not cost adrenaline. The next defensive we have is Reflect, and that is a defensive threshold that requires a shield. It will last 9.6 seconds, and all damage taken is halved, as well as half of that damage being reflected back to whoever attacked you, even if it's not your main target. You would mainly use Reflect for shield camping, as DPS wise, it's better to use a dual wield or 2H setup. Realistically speaking, you only want to use Reflect when Devotion and Res are on cooldown, or what you're taking is typeless damage, or otherwise taking damage from multiple combat styles. An example of using Reflect is P5 Telos, where you take a lot of initial damage. At mid-tier PvM, Reflect isn't really needed unless you absolutely struggle with sustaining damage. Here is a tip on how to use Reflect alongside Resonance. You'll not only get a massive heal from Res, but also a huge amount of damage reflected back to the enemy. The only notable place you want to use this at is Telos High Enrage when you're dealing with the Hold Still attack. I can't really think of many other places where you take a lot of damage, and it's worthwhile for that 15% adrenaline cost. After this we have Debilitate, and that is a defensive threshold. You will hit your target with Debilitate, and if and only if that hit lands, you take 50% less damage from your target that you just hit. Now, a shield is not required, but higher tier shields will make the duration last longer. The base duration is 7.8 seconds, or up to 13.8 seconds with a tier 90 shield. One huge advantage of Debilitate compared to Reflect is that a shield is not required to use this. However, here are a couple of problems. For one thing, the damage isn't reflected back to the boss. Second, you can only debilitate one target. And 3, the hit has to land in order for it to work. As shown on this example, I use this on Raksha so I can worry less about prayer flicks. In general, this is yet another ability that's helpful for when it comes to learning bosses. Next up, we have Barricade, and that is a defensive ultimate ability with a shield requirement. It will last a minimum of 4.8 seconds with 10.2 seconds if you're using a tier 90 shield. For the entire duration, all damage taken is blocked from Barricade. Cade is very adrenaline heavy, and so it's not recommended for the most part unless it's a last resort situation where you have no food left. It's just, it doesn't last reasonably long enough for you to build adrenaline for DPSing. A good example to use Cade would be at Telos P5 due to having unlimited adrenaline. This is also useful at Virago because it's heavily time gated, which is what bomb tanks will do. I think you can also use this for raids when it comes to base tanking as well. After this we have Immortality, which is a defensive ultimate ability that requires a shield. It lasts 30 seconds long and reduces the amount of damage taken by 25%. If you die, however, you are revived to 40% of your max HP, but the duration ends instantly. After you die and revive with Immortality, you are 2 ticks immune, but you're completely stalled in an animation. Now some insta-kill attacks such as from AoD will bypass Immortality. There really aren't many places to use this at, in my opinion. You'll mostly use this at P5 Talos before 1k in Rage if you cannot DPS him in time. However, a lot of you don't know this, but in PvP situations, if you use Immortality and then you die, your teleport block is actually cleared. This is often a really useful tactic for escaping PKers, and if you were to pair this with Persistent Rage Relic, you'll remain at 100% Adrenaline even if the PKer attacks you first. However, if you do attack the PKer first, then it will get drained. As shown on this demo, I'm using Immortality, then running to the level 30 Wilderness for the PKer to kill me, so that my tele block will be cleared and then I can teleport out with Amulet of Glory. Trust me, this is not a good demonstration because I didn't realize I was stuck in the level 32 Wilderness. The next ability we have is Revenge, which is a defensive threshold and a shield is required. It will last 19.2 seconds, and for every non-miss hit that you take, it will give you 1 Revenge stack. Each stack will give you plus 10% max ability damage for up to 10 stacks in total. If you're using a defender, however, it will become 5% for up to 50%. It's only good at places where you can build up to 10 stacks quickly, and the most notable example is Telos. 10 stack Revenge with Defender is actually better DPS than a dual wield or 2H. I will do a video demonstrating on how to use Revenge DPS in the future, so be on the lookout for this. At P5 Telos, because golems hit very hard, you can get 10 stacks of Revenge very quickly. Natural Instinct is unlocked from the World Wakes quest. It is an ultimate ability that lasts 20.4 seconds. There are one of 2 effects, and the first effect is perhaps the most popular one, which will double the adrenaline gain for the entire duration from most sources, such as basic abilities. Unfortunately, adrenaline potions are not affected by this. Otherwise, if this is a PvP situation or you're facing a monster that uses adrenaline, then it will sap and steal the opponent's adrenaline. 20 seconds is rather short for most situations to utilize this. However, it's good for places that have a time gate, and sometimes you can substitute this for Adrenaline or Limitless Sigil when they're both on cooldown. It's also good for when you need a lot of adrenaline so that you can dump thresholds or even multiple ultimate abilities quickly. Really, this is not something beginners would use often. A good tip when it comes to using Natural Instinct is to use a couple of adrenaline boosters such as Fear of the Small, Impatient Perk, etc. At 20.4 seconds, that is equivalent to 11 global cooldowns. A bossing example of this would be at Solak last phase, and because Solak is time gated, until he runs back, you won't be able to damage him. You can take advantage of this by using Natural Instinct to build adrenaline quickly, then Zerk and finish him off with thresholds before he does his insta-kill attack. The second last defensive ability we have on this list is Preparation. It's a basic ability that requires a shield which lasts 9.6 seconds long. Every hit you take reduces the cooldown of Resonance and Divert by 3 seconds. You need to be taking multiple hits constantly in order to utilize this. It's used more for adrenaline stalling or building adrenaline when you cannot do damage to a boss. An example of where I'm using this at is P4 Talos Fonts. Because I'm on Revel, I have to use a defensive ability so that I can force an auto attack, which I froze the golems and got my res off cooldown slightly sooner. And finally we have Divert, which is the new defensive ability, and that is obtained by buying it off the GE or getting lucky from a drop from Raksha. This is a basic ability that requires a shield and shares the same cooldown as Resonance. It will also follow the same damage blocking rules with res. The main difference is that instead of healing you, you will gain adrenaline based on how much you would have healed from res, and it's scaled also to the shield tier. Do note that because res does not heal from most typeless damage, you will not gain adrenaline if Divert blocks the attack. Realistically, I can't think of many places to use this at. I tried to do this at 4K in Rage Talos practice mode, and this is what I got. I ended up with 36% adrenaline gained off one huge melee auto attack. So before I end this video, we have an honorable mention, and that is Disruption Shield. This is a reward from Livid Farm which costs 290k produce points. Although it's not a defensive ability, but it's really popular in PvM. The effect is really simple, it will block the next attack. However, it has a 60-second cooldown between activation. The main difference between res is that a shield is not required, there's no duration limit, as well as it doesn't consume the global cooldown. However, the problem with Disruption Shield is that things that do 1 damage, including Devotion or Enhanced Devoted perk, will sadly get sniped. Really, I'm not sure whether this is a bug or intentional, but I think Jagex should fix this. When it comes to using this, as I said before, no shield is required as well as no duration limit, and you can do this while it's on global cooldown. This means it's a very popular option to use, which is why a lot of melee and rangers will stay on Lunar Spellbook and bring runes just for this. There are so many ways to use this, but one popular way is camp Soul Split with D-Shield until you get hit. With all that being said, this is a full list of defensive abilities. Now, I should have shown more examples, but I mean, this video is already too long, so hopefully you'll have a general idea on how to use them. So yeah, thanks for watching and I hope it helps. If I missed anything, feel free to ask. Also, be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already, because I will do more beginner PvM guides in the future.